Hello, we've got a very interesting guest for you next. If you're somebody who's ever looked at the spiritual side of the abortion debate, into the unseen battle that's going on, you may very well have come across the name Zachary King. Now, Zachary King is an ex-Satanist, a former high wizard, and actually abortion plays a key part in his story. And we're very, very privileged to have Zachary with us today. Zachary is now a passionate pro-lifer and has given his life to Jesus Christ. So thank you very much, Zachary, for being with us today. We're really grateful to you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Bless you. Thank you. And we're also very grateful to your assistant for helping set up this interview. I know that you've had a lot of health troubles. I know you had to have one of your legs amputated, and also that your sight is really deteriorating now. So how are you today, health-wise, Zachary?
I'm doing pretty well these days. Yeah, I'm also on dialysis. And, a lot of people think, when you hit the stage of dialysis that your life is over and it's the worst it's ever going to be. The day before you get on dialysis is the worst your life is ever going to be, because you can't process the toxins in your body anymore and you feel horrible. The day you get on dialysis, you don't realize how bad you feel till you no longer feel bad. It's sort of like the first time you get into a state of grace, you didn't know how bad the sin felt until you no longer had it. And then it takes your body 6 weeks to acclimate to dialysis, because it takes not just all the toxins out of you, it feels like it takes your life out of you for 6 weeks till your body acclimates to it. And then once your body gets used to it, I've been on it for 4 years. I feel fantastic 3 days a week.
I love the way you bring the spiritual side into everything, Zachary. So I wonder if, to start with, maybe, Zachary, we could just start by, could you just give us a sort of brief overview of your story for people who maybe aren't familiar with anything about you, just to, help them hear a little bit about you and see the part that abortion played in your story. If we could just maybe start with that.
Sure. Well, I got started when I was 10 years old, trying to find out if magic was real, verified that magic was. Joined a satanic coven, started going to coven meetings when I was 12, officially joined when I was 13, contributed to my first assisted abortion when I was 14. When I left my first coven, I was looking for another coven, and I found one at college. Turned out it wasn't really a real satanic coven. It wasn't what I was looking for. Found out that there was a huge satanic coven out there that wanted to rule the world. And as a little nerdy, geeky kid, I wanted to do that. And I found out there was a position called a high wizard, and I wanted to do that. That was the official magic person in the coven. I had been the official magic person in my previous coven, and they said they didn't know how you get it, but they hear that the devil handpicks you. So I figured I needed to get the devil's attention, and I knew that abortion did that. So I did 4 or 5 more abortions, and then I got called into this meeting when I was about to turn 21, and it turned out that I was being chosen to be the next high wizard. And then as the high wizard, I got picked when I was 21 years old. I did approximately, I did 146 total abortions. I did 3 that didn't work. And I got out of organized Satanism when I was 33. When I was approximately 40, someone gave me a blessed miraculous medal, and I felt like instantly I was converted to Catholicism. And I officially, that was in January of 08. In May of 08, I officially entered the church, and I've been touring the world ever since. It was the Reader's Digest condensed version of my story.
So for people who aren't familiar, when you say a miraculous medal, this is a medal with the image of Mary, the mother of Jesus, on it, isn't it?
Yes, on one side, and there's stars that go around her head, and on the other side is two giant M's, and sometimes a crucifix or a cross.
So tell us a little bit about when you were brought up. Did you have any faith in your background then at all, Zachary? Were you brought up with any Christianity?
I was brought up Baptist, and I was raised Baptist from the time I was in diapers, and I was in the Baptist church when I was in my satanic coven. What eventually made me walk away from the Baptist faith is that, on my Baptist church, they would broadcast every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. on the country music station in my parents' hometown. So my parents would play that so that they could hear the sermon for the day. And I had told my dad that I was tired of hearing about money. Every single sermon, no matter what the Bible verse was, it had to do with money. Like, this is my favorite sermon. Jesus wept because he saw the future state of the Baptist church and saw that people weren't donating enough money. And I told my dad, I hear one more sermon about money, don't bother to come pick me up. It's only 3 blocks. I'm going to walk home. And he says, not every sermon could be about money. I was like, you're not listening. If you were listening to every one of those sermons, you'd hear that too. And he told me that that was nonsense, that's impossible, that they're not all about money. It's like, all right. So that Sunday morning, I was sitting in church, and sure enough, whatever the sermon was about, whatever the Bible verse was, it had to do with money. And I walked home. I just left in the middle of the sermon. And when I got home, my mom says, your dad is really mad at you. I was like, what's he mad at me for? I didn't make the Baptist preacher preach about money. And my dad walks outside and tells me that I'm the most irresponsible person he's ever met. And I said, now, wait a minute. You could have called the Baptist preacher at any time and told him, don't preach about money this Sunday or my son will leave. But no, you left it up to fate and chance and God. And he did it anyway. And here I am. I'm not going back. So after hearing about that, it was probably 5 years of sermons about money and why we should give. Now, I'm okay with them giving the tithe. Every church has a time where you donate money. I'm okay with that. But this wasn't that. This was every sermon was about giving money. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that entire Bible can't be about giving money to the Baptist church. So I never went back.
So all your time in Satanism, Zachary, did you still believe in God?
Yeah, I was a theistic Satanist.
Right.
I wasn't exactly positive that the picture that the Bible presents is the accurate picture. I did believe that God existed, but I wasn't positive he was the good guy. Just like I wasn't positive Satan was the bad guy. Mm. Now, the longer you stay in, the more you realize Satan's a liar and that Satan is the bad guy, and that you're going to hell eventually. But, I wasn't entirely positive that there was a heaven or a hell, or that hell was permanent.
But you obviously recognized the power that Satan had, and that attracted you in some way then.
Right. When you pray to God for years for something and he never delivers, and you pray to the devil like one time and bam, you've got it. It's like, whoa, I've been praying to the wrong guy all this time.
Now, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I know later on in your story, I think it's actually through abortion that you help maybe seal your pacts with Satan and get the magic, the spells that you want to happen. Can you just run through with us how that actually works? I mean, I know this is quite a sensitive issue for some people, but I think it's something that's quite important as well.
Well, in Satanism, magic is like, it's like everybody wants to do it. In Satanism, anybody can do magic. And then there's the official magic practitioners of covens. In my first coven, the official magic practitioner wore a red robe. Everyone else wore a black robe. In the World Church of Satan, the magic practitioner looks like there's an artist, Pink, who has a video and a song called Like a Pill. And in the official video of Pink, Like a Pill, there's a high wizard that appears 4 times. It's a tuxedo of some sort, a top hat, a wand or a cane, and corpse paint on the face. And in the magic, if you do a magic spell of any kind, pretty much everything is theatrics. Like, you can decide you want to do a magic spell for anything and pretty much just say, I'm doing a spell for this. And as long as there's a demon presence, you don't have to do all the theatrics. The theatrics isn't for me, it's for you. I'm going to do a bunch of spells in front of an audience or in front of a witness, and they want to see the powder exploding, flames shooting up, lights going off, smoke, mirrors. You know, the entire theatrical projection or production is designed for the person that's watching, not the person that's doing. And it's because they want to see a show. But you don't have to do all that stuff. However, the different levels of spells, like the very basic curse is like the evil eye. But to put that in perspective, giving somebody the evil eye is kind of like spitting on them. Not any big deal. It's insulting, yes. Not pleasant, yes. But overall hurtful? No, not really. Doing a different type of spell, kicking them in the shins. Hurts, yes. Irritating, yes. But overall harm? Not really. Doing another level of spell, pushing them. Insulting, yes. Hurtful? No, not really. Next level up, punching them in the stomach. Hurtful, yes. But overall, no real damage. You know, and each level of spell you do, I mean, eventually you're punching them in the eye. It hurts. It leaves a mark for a little bit. But overall, not really a lot of damage. Now, each spell, like I said, takes you a step up, a step up, a step up, a step up. Eventually, you do a hex. A hex is the biggest, darkest, deepest spell a Satanist has. And in a hex, you have to abort a baby. You give the devil something he wants, the devil gives you back what you want. You abort the baby, the devil gives you what you want. However, in the ranking of spells, where you just went from spitting on this person, to kicking them in the shins, to shoving them, to slapping them, to punching them in the stomach, to blackening their eye, this is dropping an atomic bomb on their head. Permanent damage. Most likely they're going to die. Whatever you're asking for is going to happen. You know, now, when the devil gives you what you want, though, you know, it's like my first spell was for money. First spell I ever did. And I found a can of tennis balls with a $5 bill in it. I did it again 7 days later, found a $10 bill on the side of the road. Now, I'm not being specific how much money I want. I'm just saying money. So in 8 days, I get $15. My third spell for money, I did it again. And this time I went out and I found $1,000 on the side of the road or in a large parking lot. The thing about the devil is that he'll keep nickel and diming you, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to get exactly what you're going for unless you're doing a hex. And otherwise, you're doing a spell for $1 million and he gives you 1,000. Or you're doing a spell for $1 million and here's $10. Keep doing the spell over and over again. But I mean, he knows that every time you do that spell, it's a mortal sin. So you're violating the first commandment. So his goal is to get you to hell. And if he can get you to die without you going to confession, he knows he's got another one. You know, and that's his goal. His goal is not necessarily to get you to worship him, it's to get you to not worship God.
And can you explain, Zachary, then, what is it that's so powerful about abortion that kind of really can help seal that hex? Is it to do with the blood that's spilled, or what aspect of it would it be that really gives it that power then?
God made blood a binding agent in the Old Testament. Satan knows things like that, so he mocks God and does the same type thing. You know, abortion is the fuel that helps Satan's machine run. You know, the more babies he can have murdered, the happier he gets. The further it pulls you away from God. I mean, the poor person that has the abortion done. And there's a verse in the Bible. There's a lot of people that say that, well, the word abortion's not in the Bible, so it's, you know, the Bible doesn't say anything about abortion. Well, it actually does. There's a Bible verse that talks about, I think it's in Galatians, and it's the people that don't inherit the kingdom of God. And it mentions sorcery. Well, that original word wasn't magic. Sorcery, the original word was pharmakeia. Pharmakeia was a potion that women would drink that would induce an abortion. And it would oftentimes kill the mother as well. But the original word pharmakeia meant people that practiced abortion did not inherit the kingdom of God. You know, this is a extremely satanic practice, and you're murdering the most innocent life there is. You're murdering a baby that hasn't even been outside the womb yet, who hasn't committed its first sin yet. I mean, yeah, it's born with original sin, but it hasn't sinned. Remember that in the Bible, Jesus says that these small children have an angel in heaven that behold the face of his Father.
And for Christians maybe who are listening to this, I guess it's also a good reminder of the power of the blood of Christ as well, isn't it? That can break any bonds that have been tied with Satan or any evil that's been done. You know, the power of that blood as well, his blood.
Oh yeah, and you know, whereas the satanic blood has yet to happen, you have to commit that sin to have the power of that blood. The blood of Christ has happened. I mean, if you're in, this is one of the things the Protestants were good for. They would cover all of their Bible meetings with the blood of Christ, you know, to keep demons out.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare to hear a Catholic do that prayer.
Yeah,
Terrible prayer.
I think this is something that we can learn from each other in, definitely. Just looking a bit more than at that issue, I know sometimes when I've been talking to abortion workers, people who actually work in the abortion industry, I have to say pretty much all of them have described themselves as being spiritual, as being religious. Actually, some of them describe themselves as being Christian. I know a while ago I was talking to a lady working in the abortion industry, and she said to me that she prayed to the spirit every day and that the spirit accompanied her to work in the abortion centre. And it did make me think, the way she was saying the spirit rather than the Holy Spirit, what spirit it was that accompanied her. Do you actually think there is much Satanism that goes on within the abortion industry? Is it people who are just maybe confused, or are there people who are actually knowingly doing Satan's work within the abortion industry? What's your thoughts on that?
When I was a high wizard, we did a lot of abortions in abortion centers, in abortion mills. And we were able to do that because somebody within the abortion industry was a Satanist and let us come in and use their facility. Practically one person at every abortion clinic is a Satanist or a pagan or a Wiccan. It's something to do with spirituality that's not God.
Were you ever over here in the UK, Zachary?
I've been there. I've been all over the world. Name specifically where?
London, Birmingham.
London, yeah, I've been to London to practice magic and to do abortion.
Really, really. Would you have any advice, Zachary, for any parents who might be listening to this, who are maybe concerned about their teens or young adults getting involved in the occult and black magic in some way, and where that could lead? The sort of things that you're talking about, which is ultimately where a cult can lead to. What would you say to parents maybe who have worries about this for their own children?
For one, I talk to parents all the time that say that they're tired of praying for their children. It's like, okay, praying is like nothing. It's so easy to do. You got to pray a rosary every day anyway. You don't have to pray 50 different rosaries. You can put all 50 intentions into one rosary. Also, at the end of the day, remember, God's not limited by space and time. So at the end of the day, when you realize that you forgot to add somebody to your rosary, add them now. You don't have to pray another rosary. Just say, I want to add my son Bob into the rosary that I prayed earlier today. God can do that. Remember, we are limited by things. God is not. Don't stop praying for your kids. The person that you're praying for, that you want to convert, you're thinking that you'd love for them to have converted yesterday or today. This afternoon would be a great time for them to convert. But maybe if they converted today, they wouldn't affect the 100 or so people that they might affect if they convert in 10 more years. God is waiting for them to convert in his perfect timing, not yours. It's our imperfect timing. We think we know best because we're the parent. It's like, you don't always know best. God knows better than you. He will convert them when it's his time to do so. Don't give up on them and show them. This was where my parents fell short. My parents were the no police. Anything I wanted to do, the answer was no. And I viewed God the same way. God was also the no police. I mean, if you look in the Bible, it's not of, here, you're allowed to do this, and you're allowed to do this, and you're allowed to do this. I didn't see any of that. I saw, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. However, if you look at a book of thou shalt nots, 10 thou shalt nots also shows you what you are allowed to do. But as a child, not really, I didn't see it that way. But my parents, would shut me down at every turn. You have to, if you're going to tell your kids you can't do this, you got to give them an alternative of what they can do. You can't take away something and just be happy with that. you've got to take it away, but you've got to replace it with something else. You know, you don't want your kids to hate you and your religion. You know, hating you is fine. Don't let them hate your religion. You know, show them how joyous it is to be in the Catholic Church. You know, it doesn't have to be a stick in the mud religion. You don't have to go in, everybody be unfriendly. Now, I know you've been to a Catholic church where everybody's unfriendly. All of us have. Even some of our own churches are unfriendly. You know, people walk in, they're a new person, they come in, they don't get greeted, they leave. They're like, what a bunch of stick in the muds. You know, you've got to show people God's love. God's love is not this stoic, stick in the mud, I don't care about you, you're all sinning, you're all going to hell. You know, we talk about God's love and God's joy, but we don't display it. We don't show it to anyone. You especially have to show it to the young people. They have to see that God is pure love and that he cares for them and he doesn't want them to go to hell. You know, because if we're not showing them a good time, so to speak, the devil will show them a good time. But it's not the kind of good time you want them to have.
Very true. And if you're thinking of love as being the hallmark of God, I guess from my experience, I think one of the hallmarks of Satan is fear. And I know often when I'm talking to women who are considering abortion, I wouldn't even say 9 times out of 10, I think pretty much every time I've spoken to a woman considering abortion, ultimately it's been because of fear of some kind, whether it's, you know, fear of what the future holds, fear of what people will say, fear that she can't cope. But equally, often when I'm talking to people who describe themselves as being pro-life, I often seem to find that it's fear that holds them back from actually putting their pro-life beliefs into practice. And sometimes it can end up just being a bit of a label that they wear rather than a way they live their life. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we counteract Satan's fear, any kind of tips for dealing with, you know, that fear that can really paralyze us. Like I say, whether it's somebody in a crisis pregnancy or whether it's a pro-lifer who just thinks, I couldn't possibly, I don't know, pray outside an abortion centre or speak up in my university or whatever it might be, because they just feel so fearful. Any tips for that, Zachary?
You know, God commands us all to evangelize. And he also says that he will vomit out the lukewarm on Judgment Day. So you don't want to be lukewarm. You don't want to be vomited out. And you do want to evangelize. You do want to let people know the truth. You can't look at somebody heading towards the edge of a cliff and say, oh, I don't want to embarrass them and let them know they're about to die. Because on Judgment Day, we answer for what we did do and what we didn't do. So, you know, if you know somebody is about to do something wrong, you need to tell them. Now, if you tell them and they get insulted and walk away from you, you still told them. That's on them. But if you don't tell them and they do something dumb, like they get an abortion, they kill their baby, they murder their baby, and you knew it was a sin, and you don't tell them, that's on you. You know, it's also on you if you decide, like in this country, we have a lot of people that claim to be Catholic and vote for the Democratic president who's for abortion. Don't you realize that every person that you put in office that is doing something that is against the will of God, you have to account for all that. So if that person's accountable for millions of dead babies because of bills that they signed, that makes you partially responsible for all that because you voted that person in. You know, you can't see the evil that men do and think that you don't hold a part to it. You know, we are all accountable for every decision we make and we don't make. You know, and you can't be afraid for speaking the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk, Zachary, about laws that have been voted in. I know recently here we had home abortions, pills by post abortions that have now become permanently legal at the moment in the UK. And I know people are particularly concerned about this because, it's bringing a certain evil actually into people's own house. I know a while ago I was talking to somebody who worked in the exorcism ministry, and he was particularly concerned about this, saying, how the house might well need a blessing afterwards, because of the evil that's happened, under that roof. Have you got any thoughts about particular concerns about abortions happening in people's own homes? And I presume this is, something that particularly Satan was really wanting to bring that into the family home.
The only abortions that I'm familiar with that happen in people's homes is when it's a satanic coven that gets that to happen. And here, when that happens, there's an abortion doctor and an abortion nurse, and they have full the abortion equipment that is needed for that event to take place. So and a lot of times it's more sterile there than it is in the abortion clinic. But, and any place where abortion is happening attracts demons, because you have murder, you have blood, which is a binding agent, and you have, the killing of innocents, which is really a big deal. It's, all the things that the devil looks for.
Mm. So I guess, again, it's turning to Jesus to help protect us from that and for any mistakes that we might have made in that area.
Well, we've got to either stay in a state of grace or get in a state of grace. And you've got to remember sacraments and sacramentals. All of these things play mighty roles. I mean, if you're going to go out and stand in front of an abortion clinic, remember that is a sanctuary for demons. You've got to be in a state of grace when you go out there. Bring your rosary. It's the most powerful tool we have as an individual. That, if we're not a priest, you may want to get out of your car and spray your shoes with holy water, and then walk around the clinic and pray. Spiritual warfare is real. In the Nova Soto church, when you pray, we have prayers. One of them is for all things visible and invisible. What do you think that prayer means? It says visible and invisible right there in the prayer. Would that be demons and angels? Probably. People pray that prayer not having any idea what that means. Or you mentioned that they're exorcists. And then I have people that go to my talks that say that they never knew the devil was real. They never knew there were demons. They grew up in the Catholic Church, never knew that hell was a real thing. I was like, really? If you never read your Bible? It's mentioned 93 times by Jesus most of the time. Demons are talked about, Satan's talked about, but people are like clueless. We have really bad formation. We have really bad formation in this country, so I'm sure it's everywhere. But
yeah, it's certainly here too, Zachary.
What's that?
It's certainly here too.
And it's like we if there's no demons or hell and there's no Satan, why did Jesus come? What was he rescuing us from? If everybody goes to heaven, why did Jesus suffer so bad before he died? There was no reason for him to come if there was no danger.
Absolutely. Have you ever prayed outside an abortion centre, Zachary?
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to have, I don't have a ride there now. I used to have a ride with a friend every Friday. I would go, and I did it for 3 or 4 years here in Wichita. And they have a very organized pro-life group there. They have their table, all their merchandise, all their paperwork. Every time a car enters or leaves, they copy down the make, model of the car and the license plate number. If people drive by and the windows are down, they talk to them. They try and tell them that there's an alternative. There's another place they can go, a place that will help them. Try and let them know that, that's a baby. My dad used to talk about people talking out of both sides of their mouth. And I never understood what that meant. It didn't make sense to me. I mean, when you talk out of both sides of your mouth, how do you do that? And then David DeLayden here in the States came out with 8 secret Planned Parenthood videos where out of one side of their mouth, Planned Parenthood said, it's just a lump of cells. It's just some tissue and some blood. It's not a real baby. But out of the other side of their mouth, they said they were selling baby body parts like a brain, lungs, heart, liver, kidneys. How do you get baby body parts out of a lump of cells? Don't you have to get baby body parts out of a baby? So out of one side of their mouth, it's not a baby. And out of one side of their mouth, it is a baby. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. It either is or it isn't. And if you're selling baby body parts, you're selling them out of a baby.
I know, Zachary, when I've listened to some of your testimony before, I've always been really touched with the way you've talked about how, because you understand the mercy of God, you don't have any shame anymore. And I think that's actually really powerful, because so often I'm talking to women who've been through an abortion experience, men as well who've been through abortions, and maybe even though they've repented for what they've done and have found a certain amount of healing, they still struggle with shame. Have you got any tips for people who really struggle with that, because sometimes that can be a really difficult place to be in? Any thoughts on that?
I think one of the really good things you should do is go for like a Martha's Vineyard or, a retreat center that helps post-abortive women or men deal with what they went through. I went for years. I mean, my first assisted abortion was when I was 14. I finally went to a post-abortive retreat last February, like February 2021. And I had a friend that had talked about how great it was. And I never thought I needed one. It was like, no big deal. I don't need it. I don't feel called. Finally, I felt called to go. And I went. And, it's like a weekend thing. And it was so intense. It might have been longer than a weekend. It was so intense. And it heals you. It takes you from beginning to end of what you went through, everything that you may or may not have done, feelings that you would have gone through back then that you're not even aware of. But a lot of healing can take place. Also, hang out at adoration. Make adoration your favorite place to go. Sit in a room with Jesus. Sometimes a good cry is all you need. And sometimes sitting in front of Jesus, it's just you and Jesus, reach out, hug. A good hug goes a long way. And a good cry, sometimes, one good solid cry where you're not afraid. You do the ugly cry. It's like, your mouth is distorted. You got snot running out of your nose. You got, the spittle coming out of your mouth. Your eyes won't stop, but Jesus is right there with you. All the pain that you've ever felt can't top what he did on the cross. And he did that for everybody. including you. You know, when he was hanging up on the cross, he didn't say, I'm dying for everybody but Zach. No, his arms were outstretched for me too.
Mm.
You know, and being in adoration, I mean, I sat in there anywhere from 30 minutes to 18 hours a day. And you can pour out your heart, you know, and it's a good place to heal. You know, sitting in there, getting a spiritual director that can help you recover from what you've done, somebody that'll listen to your confession and also give you counseling. You know, going to the retreat centers is a great idea. You know, there's so much stuff. And, you know, if you go to my website, allsaintsministry.org, I've got all my contact information is there. You can send me an email. You know, we get back to you. We answer emails every Tuesday and Thursday. You know, as well, my phone number is there, you know, and when people call me, it's my cell phone. You know, it's very easy to get a hold of me. My contact information is there. I even have a Twitter account, but I almost never use it. Actually, one year I had one Twitter follower and I wished her a Merry Christmas. And you know, being Catholic is such an easy thing. I mean, we have a lot of responsibility because we're the one true church and we know it. And we're responsible for a lot of stuff. We have to evangelize the world. There's only 1.3 billion of us. You know, that means there's 6 billion of the rest of the world. It's a lot of people we have to evangelize to. But go to confession, get in a state of grace. Go to adoration, hang out with Jesus.
So moving forward then, Zachary, final question. How do we end abortion?
There's a fun one. Okay, I have a book and a CD set called Abortion is a Satanic Sacrifice. In the first part, I talk about how we got abortion in America. In the second part, I talk about the 10 agencies that move Satan's agenda around the world, which these are groups that put abortion in the four corners of the planet. And then in part 3, I describe how that abortion is spiritual warfare and how that you can't fight a spiritual battle physically. You have to defeat and fight in a spiritual battle spiritually. So I talk about ways to shut down an abortion clinic and where it has worked. You know, in where 40 Days for Life got started in Texas, they prayed and fasted for 40 days a year for 9 years and shut down an abortion clinic. So we as human beings shut down the abortion clinic in 9 years. But what's 9 times 40? It's 360. God shut down the abortion clinic in 360 days. It seems like the lesson there was, had we done it for 360 days in a row, he'd have shut it down, because he shut it down in less than a year. We're the ones that spread it out over 9 years. I say to do a Eucharistic procession with an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and people walking behind praying rosaries. We had 2 abortion clinics shut down in Melbourne, Florida. One, a priest did it, and it shut down in 2 years. Then we had another place where a bishop did it, and it shut down in 6 weeks. We had in Rockford, Illinois, we had a group of exorcists, anywhere between 1 and 4, would go out as often as they could and prayed and did exorcisms outside an abortion clinic. And within 2 years, that abortion clinic shut down. And then I also say to have masses said in front of an abortion clinic. Now, in 2000, it was either 17 or 18, I'm not sure which. And I know that if you go to LifeSite News and enter my name, there's an article that comes up. And this article happened on the same day. Like, I tell how to shut down an abortion clinic in this article. But I also say on that day that my bishop is on that very day is out in front of an abortion clinic doing a Eucharistic procession, a mass, and an exorcism. Now that happened in October of that year. In December of that year, me and my family were at Mass, at midnight Mass, at Christmas time. And we're attending the Mass. And before the Mass starts, my friend leans over and says, Leslie Page just walked in the back door. She's sitting on the back pew. Leslie Page was the abortion doctor. So after Mass ended, we walked up to her. She didn't go up for the Eucharist. We walked up to her and she gave us both a hug. She sees us every Friday protesting at her abortion clinic. And she said she had not been to a Latin Mass in 57 years. And she felt the urge to go this year. She had the option to go to a different Mass, but chose to go to Latin Mass. So she is no longer an abortion doctor. And she's embraced her Catholic faith. Now, you want to know the power of doing a Eucharistic procession and a Mass and an exorcism at an abortion clinic? That's the power right there. You have an abortion doctor that no longer does an abortion, and she's embraced her Catholic faith and is going to the Catholic Church now.
Well, I think that's a really good lesson to us to actually use the spiritual weapons that we've got, particularly any form of prayer, but all the spiritual weapons that we have, to realise that it's not just our actions, but ultimately spiritual things which will help end this war on abortion. So thank you very much, Zachary. And I know that your full testimony is also available online if people want to hear more about your story. And like you've said, do you want to just tell us your website once more again, Zachary?
It's allsaintsministry.org. If you go to my website, the banner to the left-hand side has a YouTube link. If you click on that, the first interview that comes up is EWTN interview. It is very well done. It's probably one of my better interviews.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your time today, Zachary. We're really grateful to you. Thank you for all that you're doing now for the pro-life movement. We're really blessed to have you with us. So goodbye and thanks for being with us today, Zachary. God bless.